My parents skipped my wedding for my brother. Now their world is falling apart as the truth unravels. My parents put my brother first once more. And now their world is falling apart, so I only disclosed my wedding after it had already taken place. Mike, 21 male, is the younger brother of me, 27 female. He is the epitome of a mama's boy and a manchild, always whining and demanding respect from others. My parents have worried about him ever since he was born. He did not have a difficult birth. And does not have special needs. My parents totally abandoned me when he was just born. In particular, my mother changed from being a devoted mother to one of those boy moms that people make fun of online. Even though my father still loved and supported me, he has always been too cowardly to challenge my mother and let me win, not even once. Only my grandfather defended me. He never liked my siblings and often criticized my parents for their actions. He claims that we have a really particular link and that I make him think of his late wife. My grandma, I don't get to see him very frequently because he lives on the opposite side of the nation. Mike enjoys making fun of me since he knows our mother likes him. We've always been at odds because of this and his general conduct. He's a brat, pampered, and a terrible person. I can't even remember how many times I've been in trouble for stuff he framed me for or for performing things better than him. He received a scholarship to a prestigious out-of-state institution because football is his only talent. My parents said my college fund had been spent to pay for bills following a fire, so they didn't spend a single penny on my schooling. I found out years later that Mike had really received money to purchase a house and a car. Lucas and I met at my public university. There he was the first person with whom I really clicked. I met new friends, of course, and they are now my closest pals. I was able to leave my parents' place because of them and Lucas, who had been my best friend for years. Before we started dating, Lucas and I are now both highly respected in our professions and make excellent money. The principal problem: a year ago Lucas asked me to marry him. We didn't make a big deal out of it or broadcast it on social media since we're pretty private. My folks simply said that's nice when I informed them, and I'm beginning to believe they didn't even hear me. With our closest friends and family, we chose a modest yet elegant ceremony and reception. Lucas persuaded me to extend an invitation to my brother and parents, but they never did. Every time I went to visit, my mother would interrupt me and begin discussing my brother's achievements and exploits without indicating that it was a wedding. I'd had enough at one point. I cut her off and explained that I had an event scheduled for a certain day that couldn't be changed. She informed me that they were unable to go since they had to be there for my brother's final game of the season. Naturally, I was not surprised by this obvious preference for identical reasons. They had missed my high school and university graduations as well as my ballet recital. I chose to be petty at that moment. I didn't press my parents to attend the event after telling them it was okay for them to do. So I purposely omitted the fact that this event was actually my wedding. Advanced flash: I got married a couple of weeks ago. It was ideal. We had a great time with my family, Lucas's family, and our friends present. Everything went perfectly. And my grandpa was overjoyed to give me away. When several of my relatives questioned me about why my parents weren't present, I answered honestly that they couldn't since they had to go to my brother's game. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, though I did get a few glares for it. And my grandfather was noticeably upset for a bit, and I left for our honeymoon after the celebration. And we didn't use our phones at all, but upon our return we encountered a storm. Both real and imagined. My phone was flooded with alerts when I turned it back on. The majority came from my brother and mother because one of my paternal aunts had shared wedding pictures on Facebook, with a barely veiled jab at my parents, particularly my mother, for missing the wedding. Mike called me a variety of derogatory things. My parents received criticism from the public for their treatment of me. When the post went viral in their neighborhood, as it happens, my grandfather came to visit my parents in person, to deliver a harsh lecture humiliating my father, his son, to the point of tears. This appeared to be the tipping moment for my father. He eventually rebelled against my mom, threatening to file for divorce unless she made amends, because he was so upset about missing his only daughter's wedding and getting his father's displeasure. My mom has been bombarding my phone with messages, and it looks like this is the reason. The letters began as threats and insults, but soon evolved into pleading for forgiveness and throwing sympathy parties. Right now, my spouse and I are at home debating how to respond to the circumstance. Many of my family members have apologized for what I went through, including those I didn't invite to the wedding. They say they were unaware that this was taking place at home, since most of them reside in separate states or on the opposite side of the nation from my grandfather. I can't hold them responsible. My mom's sisters and friends, however, have been making fun of me for not telling her about the wedding directly. They maintain that she is upset over missing it. I'm not positive, but I believe she's just trying to save face. My parents' most recent communications appear to be quite sad and regretful that they were unable to attend my wedding. My family is now split into 3 groups. The majority who support me, my maternal aunts who shame me for allegedly offending my mother, and my maternal grandparents who demand that I pardon my mother because she has made an effort to make amends. My closest pals are telling me not to pay attention to them. Answering frequently asked questions. Did I tell my parents I was getting married? Indeed. I did. All of my guests received conventional paper invitations and I was informed that they had all arrived. My parents, some distant relatives and some Lucas family members didn't reply. I sent follow-up mails to verify that I was there. Those who did not respond informed me that they were unable to attend. I texted my brother and mom to ask, but they ignored me. I didn't bother pressing further because I was aware of their past and had everything planned. Why didn't I reschedule the wedding? I was dismissed each time I pushed on emphasizing my celebrations to get an answer. Because I had already been informed that there was my brother's game. It seemed that some things were just more essential than me. Therefore I was frequently told it wasn't important and to quit being pissy and bothersome. It wasn't worth the effort, so I think it's fair that I quit pressing at this point to see if my parents would even be interested. I refrained from informing them outright that I was getting married. Naturally they didn't. I talked candidly about my wedding with my aunts and uncles. In spite of this, several times when I spoke with my aunt about venues or clothing stores, my mother was in the room. She was talking to people or on the phone. At different moments she was never attentive. She would smile, say "That's great, dear," and then move on. Whenever I brought it up during reunions, Dad and Mike were silent on the radio. I had previously experienced harassment whenever I attempted to go no contact NC. They never went to my high school bachelor's or master's graduations because of things involving my brother. And I was humiliated for having the audacity to abandon my family. This was passed down from my maternal aunts and grandparents. In addition to my parents and brother, Lucas was the pivotal moment. Shortly after my previous attempt at going NC, we began dating, and with his encouragement, I now feel more secure in my position. I wasn't as confident in myself before. Then I attempted to inform my paternal family about my parents' treatment when I was 14 years old. My parents pretended to be apologetic while my aunts, uncles, and grandfather chastised them. After we arrived home, I was subjected to lifelong gaslighting and beatings for lying. I continued to communicate with my paternal side, but out of fear kept the abuse a secret. My grandpa was the only one who knew, but he was constantly warned that if he attempted to step in he would lose my favor. My parents don't know my new address and I reside an hour away from their little town. This is deliberate. My mother supported my brother's attempt to break into my former apartment to steal money, saying siblings share their goods. I've since relocated and I'll make sure they never find out where I live. My college funds were not immediately spent by my parents after lying about needing it for costs. They used it to purchase a house close to my brother's college when he started his freshman year and a car for his 16th birthday until it met their needs. They did not touch the fund. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who read my story and wished my husband and I luck. I am so appreciative of your encouraging words, affection, and criticism. The response has exceeded my expectations by a wide margin. To people who think my tale isn't true, I'm glad your family life is better than mine, even if you consider my reality to be a fantasy. But I would really appreciate it if you would quit teasing me and DMing me to say that I'm fabricating a tale to get attention. If I missed anything in the first post, it was because I was so distraught and crying over the abuse I was experiencing from my family. Keeping a modicum of civility would be appreciated, but you are not obligated to read or believe my narrative. It was obvious from the invitation that it was a wedding. There are no justifications for ignorance. The wedding was not attended by my maternal side of the family. While some sent gifts but chose not to attend, the majority were busy. I'm not sure why they didn't talk to my mother about my wedding. I'm not like I live in their heads. My mother essentially apologized by SMS. As part of her purported atonement, this past week has been a little chaotic. I took a few days off from Reddit to collect my thoughts. After that, Lucas and I talked for a long time about what to do. I don't think I could ever love him more than I do now, since he has been my rock. Although talking about my parents was never acceptable to me, Lucas gave me a harsh reality check that I really needed. We came to the conclusion that it wasn't healthy for me to stay in touch, stick around, and not go no contact. I came to the realization that I never really went NC because deep down I still needed their approval. I know it's pathetic, but it's like a drug. My parents can be warm, hilarious, loving, and caring when we're together. Until they're not, you want their praise so badly that you ruin yourself because of the little affection they offer you, which makes you need more. However, that is sufficient. I made a self-promise that things would change. After giving it some thought, I made the decision to go and with everyone who made a fuss out of this situation, and to begin therapy for good. This time I messaged my father after thinking about it for days, telling him that I would meet him, Mom, and Mike somewhere neutral if he wanted to chat. He agreed right away. We met at the park the following day. We were joined in repairing the damage by my father's siblings and sisters. It appeared as though my father had been crying for some time. My mother appeared the same, but it appeared to be more embarrassed and angry. My sibling appeared irritated. I explained to them how I had always been harmed by their acts and preference for my brother, and how their abusive behavior had led me to conclude that I did not want to speak to any of them ever again. My mother made several attempts to interrupt me during the meeting, but my aunt, who made the Facebook post, always stopped her. They had no genuine response when I questioned why they were treating me in this manner. My uncle chastised my dad for constantly sobbing and apologizing without providing an explanation. My mother finally acknowledged I just didn't like you, as though she were asking herself that question. For the first time simple enough, my brother, he acknowledged that it was like a sport to him to get attention and make me miserable. I asked more questions. They said they never received my invitation. When I questioned why they never replied, they denied ever seeing the texts. When I presented them, as it happens, they were speaking the truth. My folks weren't home when they received the wedding invitation. When my brother saw the invitation, he tore it up and threw it away. When he was there for the weekend, my parents erased my texts after I sent them. He said it was simple because he had archived my chat so they wouldn't receive any notices. I was upset. I had to stop Lucas from striking Mike in the face. When I asked him why he would do such a thing, he shrugged and said it wasn't as important as the stuff we had planned. Oddly enough, my folks were furious and started berating Mike in response. He threw a fit and started crying like a crocodile. To be honest, I was grimly satisfied as I saw it happen. My mother then made an attempt to brush things off, saying that everything had been worked out and that there was no need to fuss over a miscommunication. She went so far as to say that I should clear their identity. That irritated me. I cut her off and informed her that they were not at all forgiven. Their years of negligence were not undone by Mike's disdain for the invitation. In addition, they ought to have inquired about my wedding, which had been clear. Are you curious about my mother's reaction? She sincerely believed Lucas didn't like me and would never marry me, saying, I did hear you talking about a wedding of yours, but I just thought you were being delusional and seeking my attention with exaggerated scenarios. Believe me when I say that I was on the verge of losing my patience. Additionally, it was discovered that my brother didn't even have a football game to go to. In order to dodge my event, my parents made up a tale about how my husband friend and I don't know much about football, we prefer soccer, and how I stopped asking about it when Mike made fun of me in high school. Since Lucas and I are blocked on social media and my brother has private accounts, I was unable to verify or deny the existence of a game at the time I made the original post. I foolishly believed what my parents said, but no. Do you want to know where the manchild actually went? Mike wanted to go to Disneyland, so they did. My brother's 100th tantrum vacation was covered by the football news. They had apparently done this several times in the previous months. The sheer volume of material I had discovered at that time left me exhausted and overwhelmed. I lost my temper when I realized how horribly I had been duped. I got up and told my father that he was a weak, depressed man who couldn't defend his child without his wife's consent. I informed my brother that he was a worthless justification for a guy who would never achieve anything in his life and would always live like the useless leech that he is. I told my mother that she was the worst narcissist and that she was a worthless little woman who was so irrelevant that she didn't even merit attention or condemnation. I went on to say that she was too rotten for even God to save. But I was too angry. She became so enraged that it appeared as though steam was escaping from her ears. When I yelled at her to shut up, sit down and listen for once. After that, all I can recall is that I continued to babble nonstop. All of my hurt and rage seemed to pour forth. I believe the park as a whole fell silent. At one point I told Mike and my parents that I was disowning them all, and that if they were wise they would never contact me again. My brother and parents were left to the mercy of my aunts and uncles as I snatched up my pocketbook and departed with Lucas, Anna and Francis. Eventually had a panic attack on the drive home once the reality of what I had just heard and learned hit me. Anna helped me navigate it while Lucas was driving till we pulled into a parking area so I could relax. I am incredibly appreciative of their assistance. I threw myself onto the bed as soon as I got home and fell asleep. I really wanted to do what you said and share the entire discussion on Facebook, but I couldn't do it because of my job and profession. Sharing my tale anonymously on Reddit is one thing. Posting my identity and face all over Facebook is quite another. That was not a route I could take. I did something better. Instead, I gave the woman in charge of my mom's church a folder that contained all of my mother's derogatory messages and terrible remarks. My mom put a lot of effort into joining this close-knit society, but it's also really critical. It is a social death sentence to be rejected by them. Indeed, that is precisely what took place. Like clockwork, the scandal quickly swept through the little community, spreading beyond the church. You can only imagine my parents' reactions to this. I discovered further texts from my maternal side of the family ridiculing me further for upsetting and disrespecting their sister or daughter. As a result of my small deed, I took your counsel at that moment and informed my family that they would no longer be involved in my life. Going forward, they might talk all they wanted I made, but I wouldn't give a damn. Rather, they ought to be appreciative that I spared their spouses and employers from their offensive texts. I blocked all of them on everything, including the grandparents. I discovered a long note from my dad. He acknowledged that everything I had stated was accurate, expressed regret for not having the courage to confront my mother, and acknowledged that he was amazed at how much of my life he had lost as a result of her. He informed me that he was sick of being controlled and intended to file for divorce from her. Regardless of my choice. In addition, he said he wanted to get close to me in order to make up for the years we had missed. I responded to him by saying that I didn't want to see or forgive him. Just now he replied that he loved me and would do all in his power to win me back. After responding that I didn't think that was credible, I blocked him as well. To be honest, his sleazy attempt to get out of the problem by blaming my mother was pitiful. At least she admitted to being cruel. However, he was limited to blaming others for his decisions. People like that are not what I want in my life. Along with the remainder of my maternal side, my mother and brother were barred. I blocked Mike as well since he continued to mock and disrespect me in his communications. My mother organized a self-pity party since she was rejected by her community and her marriage was failing. I said good riddance and then I blocked her as well in order to help me. My grandfather chose to remain with us for a bit. He really is the greatest even though he won't acknowledge it. I can see that he is flattered by some of your remarks that he has read. Few days have gone by since and nothing has happened. Lucas has been treating me like royalty and I'm about to begin therapy. This is it, even though I know it's not the revenge-fueled drama filed update you were hoping for. If anything changes or develops, I'll keep you informed. I sincerely appreciate all of your love and support. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more story like this.